will talk for 30 minutes, do his presentation. All of the mics will be muted during this time to allow him to explain better and avoid any interferences. And once we come to the Q&A session, that's when we will ask you to kindly raise your hands and the microphone will be automatically switched on. We also encourage you to use the chat box, as this is a way for you during the presentation to probably comment and ask your questions. I will now give the floor to Dr. Ousmane Badiane and welcome you again to this webinar.
Thank you very much, Nabu, for that introduction. Welcome to everybody who's joining us today. And warm greetings and welcome to Professor Sheryl Hendriks from UP. We're happy to have you with us, Sheryl. Thank you for taking your time to join us. And also welcome to our colleagues from the RESAX nodes, Joseph Karugia and Graham Machai and their teams. So we today continuing our work and our webinars around COVID. You know, we have several work streams that we deal with, from the impact on production systems, to the mapping of vulnerability, to the pandemic, to the work on the disruption of global trade and what it means for poverty and growth, to now the impact on local staples markets, the dynamics and the price adjustment. Today we'll be looking at the same things but from a different angle, what the disruption of domestic food systems, in particular food markets, can mean in terms of reduced access to micronutrients. We often think about food just in terms of its quantity and the calorie intake. Yet, if you look at a country like Senegal, where maybe the calorie access issue has been resolved, you'll be shocked when you look at micronutrient deficiency across the different types of micronutrients, from iron to zinc to vitamin A to the vitamin Bs and so on and so forth. So as we know, food is taken in and has very critical functions in our bodies. And therefore, it is really what we take in terms of macronutrients that should be our focus on when we talk about nutrition and talk about food. So we are therefore going beyond the impact of COVID on local food staples markets, their prices, the supplies, and so on and so forth, to try and understand the implication it can have to the intake of vital micronutrients for different parts of the countries. So we have Dr. John Lumwengo, who is a researcher at the IFPRI and at Academia 2063, who is leading our work in this area, who's going to present today the first series of findings in that area. And we look forward to expanding that work and the discussion with you. So I would like to stop here and welcome you, John. Thank you for taking your time to make this presentation, and the floor is yours now. Welcome, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ousmane, and thank you for everyone for joining the webinar today. As Ousmane said, so the piece we are working on these days with some of my colleagues, including Leah here, is looking at the impact of COVID-19 on hidden hunger across Africa, but today we will focus on Senegal. Hidden hunger here refers to micronutrient deficiency. So the motivation, really, we know that COVID-19 is expected, or it's already having an impact on food supply and demand because of the disruptions due to measures taken to contain the spread of COVID-19. Most of the analysis that we see here and there focus on the overall food consumption. Of course, there are part of it on the production, but here we focus on consumption. But we don't see much beyond looking at the change in quantities to dive deep into the quality of the food being consumed, or how the shock from COVID is disrupting or changing the micronutrient consumption, especially among the poor and vulnerable households. And the reason is because micronutrient deficiency does have a relation with some critical health issues that are associated with complications due to COVID-19. When you look at the, so the objective really of the space is to assess the impact of COVID-19 on hidden hunger, as I said, as related to food price changes. So we will have a little look at micronutrient intake in Senegal. I will estimate both income and price elasticities for nutrient consumption, and of course, using the change for the first semester of 2020 to see how the changes in price, especially in price of cereals, might have affect the demand and consumption of micronutrients, including calories. So why does it matter anyway? When you look at the list of health issues that are associated with micronutrient deficiencies, here I'm using a study, we are using a study from Khan and his colleagues from 2018, and you compare the same list with what CDC, the Center for Disease Control in the US, has released related to COVID-19, you can see some correlation. The same CDC, for example, lists serious heart conditions, cancer, things like obesity, sickle cell disease, diabetes, as health conditions that put individuals at increased risk for severe illness from COVID-19. But they are more or less the same type of health conditions that are associated with inappropriate nutrient consumption. So it's then makes sense that while combating COVID-19, containing the effect of COVID-19, we need to make sure that it includes a component on how to address the issue of micronutrient deficiencies. From similar work that we did last year in Senegal using the same data, we listed briefly some of the health issues that are associated with the micronutrient calories and micronutrient that we are considering in this paper, going from calories, protein, calcium, iron, zinc, and all the way to vitamin A. We see, body weight loss, increase in increased fatigue. We have issues of bones, health related to calcium, anemia for iron, stunting weight loss related to zinc, and of course, immune system impairs associated with vitamin A. So here again, we can see that there is that correlation between micronutrient deficiencies and health issues that seems to be critical when it comes to COVID-19. Data methodology, we are using a data set, a survey from the PAPA project in Senegal, data collected between 2013 and 2018, which covered more or less 6,500 households between urban and rural areas. As an analytical framework, we are using the Lancaster model, which states that the demand for a good can shift from the quantity of the good to the characteristics of the same good. And in this case, the characteristics of that food item, the food good, we are referring to the microcalories and energy and micronutrients. The result with respect to income elasticities, the results they're all significant across energy and the micronutrients, again, from calories, protein, all the way to vitamin A. And we see that there is a difference between, depending on the location, there is a difference between urban and rural households in the way they react to the change in income with respect to the demand for those micronutrients. Some of the key most significant difference lies in calories, protein, and iron, and it is very important because though our simulation that will come later on will focus on the price change only, it is important to bear in mind that change in income is likely to affect the demand for consumption of those micronutrients. Unfortunately, at this point, we haven't yet been able to assess the change in household income induced by COVID-19. Now, on the price elasticities across those energy and micronutrients, here on the calories intake as change in calorie intake as a result of change in the prices. We are grouping, just for parsimony, we are grouping the food items into different groups: cereals, pulses, vegetables in the tubers, fruits, meat and fish, milk, oil, and sugar. Yeah, there might be a debate there. How do we? But that's a standard practice in empirical demand literature, or food demand literature. And here too, we see that there is quite differences between urban and rural areas. One of the most important is on cereals price changes, where in rural area, households tend to be more sensitive to change in cereal price with respect to calories. While when you look at the sugar, the inverse is true. The urban households tend to be more sensitive to price change when it comes to calories intake. With vitamin A, the story is a little bit different. One would say, if you use the demand theory as reference, it's on characteristics, just because apparently for some of the food groups like sugar and vegetable and tuber in both rural and urban areas, when the price of those food items increases, we see an increase in the demand of vitamin A. There are two things here. The first, maybe vitamin A is what one would call the good of the poor, a given good, for which when whose demand increase, where the price increases. However, that will be our interpretation here. There might be substitution and complementarity going on in a sense that when the price of a given item, food item increases, the household, given a choice, may substitute that food item into another one, maybe less expensive, but with higher content in that specific micronutrients. One of the example will be, one example I use is between meat and caterpillars. In Africa, people know what it is. Caterpillars, they are less expensive than meat, but the content in both protein and calories is much higher. So if a household, in the face of increase in the price of meat, decided to switch to caterpillars, we will see the increase in the demand of protein, even if the demand, the price of meat has gone up just because of that substitution behavior, which then make it a little bit difficult to trace accurately the direction of changes in the demand for nutrient when the price changes. But it's very important to understand household behavior so that when we design interventions and packages, we know we can even have a list of food items that are more likely to be a substitute to available to the household when the price of one, the primary food item goes up. On zinc, the behavior is more or less expected. And again, here, I'm being careful because we are dealing with demand for nutrient, not demand for the quantities. Of course, the assumption is that the utility function is more or less the same when households shift from the demand for the quantity to the demand for nutrients. However, as I mentioned, for vitamin A, we need to be aware of those substitution and complementarity behavior as well. So here too, we see that differences between urban and rural areas. And again, cereals and pulses seems to be the key, the one that are driving the demand for zinc when price elasticity, when price of those food item changes. Iron too, same, more or less same behavior. The magnitudes, of course, are different from one micronutrient to the other, but here too, we see that difference between urban and rural. Now cereals, for all the good or bad reasons, tend to be the most important. The one whose price is more elastic compared to the others. With respect to calcium, here everything is more or less what one would expect, except for milk in urban area, which again here is maybe a good for the poor, the given good, or in the sense that we are interpreting it a result of a substitution effect from one item to the other as a result of price change. Protein, the same thing, except for vegetables and tuber in rural area, where we see an expected increase in the demand or the consumption of protein as a result of price increase. Vitamin B has more or less the same behavior as vitamin A. For some of the food group, change in prices induced either the demand, increase in the demand or consumption of vitamin B12, or the other way around. And here, except for meat and fish and oil prices in rural areas, the demand tend to rise when prices rise and of course fall when prices fall, which is the behavior of the low-income good or given good, or again, a result of substitution effect. Same applies to volatile also. Now, so we've seen the expected behavior with respect to change in income, change in prices. So now here we, for both rural and urban areas, we're looking at the price dynamics. As I said, the only prices that we are able to trace as of now are the prices for cereals. So when you look at rural areas between the two periods, 2020 and 2019, the first quarter, we see that as far as rural areas is concerned, it's not quite evident that COVID-19 had such significant impact, except for, at least in Senegal, except for ordinary broken rice, perfumed broken rice as well. However, and we are in the process of checking this, maybe the so-called COVID effect didn't start in January in a country like Senegal. Maybe it started somewhere in March. So we will revise the analysis, trying to only, of course, including March. So March, April, May, and June, and to see if we can detect the so-called COVID effect on prices. But the story is a little bit different when you look at urban areas. As I say, that if they for the first semester of 2020, if there is any COVID-19 effect, it's probably in urban areas, and that too makes sense because the urban areas is supplied both by the local production system, but they also rely on import. And we know, at least for the countries where African countries import food, we know that the COVID-19 effect might have started earlier, maybe in January or February. So it's not that surprising that we can observe a difference in price dynamics for the first quarters of the two years, 2019 and 2020. The prices change being much higher in 2020 compared to 2019 in urban areas, except for perfume broken rices. So we then combine the price elasticities for nutrient demand for nutrient and the price change observed in the first semester of 2020 to assess the expected impact. And as we can see, except for vitamin A in rural area, all the other, the calories and micronutrients are expected to decrease. Yes, of course, these are in percentages. The changes, the decrease are not, the magnitude is not very important, but I'll come back to it because I'll come back to it later on. And when you look at the urban areas, it's more or less the same, except that here it's the vitamin B12 only that is expected to increase as a result of the changes in prices we observed in first quarter of 2020. As I was saying, it is true that in the size or magnitude, the changes are not don't look that important. However, just because when you consider the first quarter in urban areas, and on average, prices increased by 3.5, and in rural area by 3.3. So we should not expect. It's more or less in a range that is acceptable. However, given the already existing food nutrient deficiency in Senegal, even a minor shock might cause a lot of trouble, and that's what we show here in this table from the study that we did last year. We computed the nutrient adequacy for the 18 micronutrient that we refer to, from calories to vitamin A. And if you look at the last two columns, those are the most important, the ratio between recommended intake of those micronutrients and the actual intake per adult equivalent. The ideal scenario would have been to see 100% or higher for each one of them. But starting with like vitamin B12 in rural area, the country managed only 18 or 19% of the recommended level. Calcium for urban and rural area, 26% versus 18%. So the country, Senegal, at least here, is already in a dire situation when it comes to nutrient deficiency. So even a minor shock, reducing the demand or the consumption of micronutrient will have a significant impact, health-related impact, as I pointed out in the beginning of the presentation. So how to conclude here? First, it is true that this is partial analysis for two reasons. First, as I said, yes, we estimated income elasticities, but we don't have information on how COVID-19 might have impact household income, so we couldn't use income elasticity. So we couldn't combine income elasticities and price elasticities to derive a more comprehensive impact of both income and food prices on micronutrient consumption. Second, on the price analysis, we are only using cereal prices out of the 8 food group that just because how the statistical system is built, the food prices that are being traced, collected as of now, focus on cereals, maize, millet, sorghum, fonio for Senegal. However, we, as I said, it's partial but very informative. We could say that every COVID-19 induced price and income changes might have a significant impact on household or community nutrient deficiencies, which is very important. And one other thing that we highlight is is the fact that there are heterogeneity across locations. So the one size fits all here doesn't apply because regardless, depending on where the household lives, the impact is different. Here, for the sake of time, we summarize, group categorized between urban and rural, but we do have the map of the nutrient deficiency across the department in Senegal. Of course, the type of the impact of different change is different based on the type of food nutrient one will consider. So the next step is to for Senegal to complete the analysis with the income and the price elasticities, to also include some other issues, differentiate, for example, for price elasticities, differentiate price from local, driven by import or by local dynamics, and of course, differentiate consumers versus producers, because as one would expect, price increase is good for producers, but it might be problematic for consumers. The same thing. So we need to maybe estimate a net impact of those dynamics on nutrient consumption. I will stop here and wait for questions and comments. Thank you.
Excellent, John. Thank you. Thank you very much for a very interesting presentation, and in particular, a very relevant question. We often look at what we can see when we have this kind of crisis. We don't try to peek into and under the skin to figure out what's happening that may be of much more consequential impact. So I think it's good that we're opening this door and looking at these things. I think it's probably a beginning of the type of analysis that you and your team are studying. And I'm sure we'll go a little bit more into greater granularity, looking here at the differences across income groups, quintiles, or deciles of income, but also looking at the substitution possibilities within individual groups of commodities, of products. It's quite interesting. So good to hear that you intend to expand the work into the income dimension, which is as important, or even sometimes even more important than the price dimension. But for now, this is great. It's the first time we're doing this kind of work. We often look at the impact of crisis on incomes and access to food in general, and this and that. But focusing on micronutrients, which is really what is the substance of nutrition. Looking at that, I think is quite important. Thank you for opening that window. I will now move to the question and answers, and thank you for all who have joined us today. I was seeing one hand earlier, which has disappeared. Maybe you have an issue of connection. But for now, I have Patrice Mirindi. Patrice, please, floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the nice presentation. My name is Patrice Mirindi. I know John Olimwengo knows me. So my question is more related to...
Patrice, can you tell us where you work?
Okay, I'm actually one of the students of John Olimwengo. He has been my supervisor in the same area of food security and nutrition. I finished the University of Nairobi. Now I'm working in South Africa at the African Leadership Academy.
Very good.
Thank you. My question is more related to what should be done. Yes, you already showed that there have been nutritional issues, even before the COVID-19. And from the results, we already see that things will become bad. So what are the let's say, what's some recommendation that you think we should consider to mitigate this current situation? And the one coming.
Very good. Thank you, Patrice, and congratulations again on your position at the African Leadership Academy. I think it's a Pretoria University, if I'm not mistaken. So very good. John, do you want to take on the question from Patrice while we get others to join?
Sure. Maybe if we can take a couple, maybe two or three.
I don't see any hands yet. Any other questions, comments for John, especially related to the question from Patrice? I see Brian Sobel. Please, Brian, and Joseph Karugia. So Joseph, I'll take Brian and I come to you.
Okay. Great, thank you. And very good presentation. This is a fascinating topic. It's always nice to see economists talking about nutrition. The government of Senegal has a very sort of export-oriented policy for horticulture.
Brian, sorry, do you want to remind us again of your affiliation?
Yes, thank you. My apologies.
No problem.
I am a technical advisor with NCBA CLUSA. We work on cooperative development and food system development in Senegal.
Nice.
So the government of Senegal takes a very export-oriented philosophy when it comes to horticulture production and fisheries to a larger extent. I'm just interested, when we think about the policies that the government of Senegal can be implementing, has that orientation exacerbated the impacts of access to specific nutrients, and what types of policies might be more appropriate to mediate the impact of these shocks? Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Joseph Karugia.
Yeah, thanks, Usman, and thank you, John, for this wonderful presentation. Two probably comments, and one is on the methods. I think the giffen goods issue can be a bit, difficult to justify, and I know you talked about substitution and complementarity effects. So perhaps as the work moves forward, we would be looking for some estimation methods that allow some parameter restrictions so that the own price substitution effect is negative as it should be. But that's my main issue is the bundling of these of the nutrients in particular types of foods. It sort of, as you call it hidden hunger. So households, especially depending on the price and the income, would probably prioritize, can I call it open hunger then? Energy, calories, energy. So they will quickly spend their little income on cereals, and perhaps because the hunger is hidden, they can address the open hunger first. Mm-hmm. So what is the role of fortification? I think in some instances, fortification with minerals, zinc, and so on is sometimes cheaper than actually buying the food commodities that have those vitamins and minerals, mm-hmm. and to some extent biofortification, if there could be some policy implications in that mm-hmm. direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. To remind folks that you work for the Regional Strategic Analysis and Knowledge Support Systems, the regional node in Eastern Africa, RESAX. I have one additional question, John, before I turn the floor to you. Muqtar Hersi Mohamed, please.
Hello. I'm Patrice Mohamed from Somalia. I'm from a Campbell Lecture Assistant of Plasma University Department of Agriculture. course,
Can you speak
very
louder, sir? We hardly hear
involving.
you.
Yeah, please. I am Muqtar Mohamed from Somalia, former lecture assistant temporary course of agronomy, development agriculture. Now I'm involved in Minister of Agriculture, food security, and other warning development. I'm a visa. So COVID-19 had a negative impact to household consumption due to the less income of household, because we know COVID-19 affected the remittance and also work because everything everywhere closed it, and there's epidemic. So to correct the household consumption due to the nutrient intake and the wood from market, what steps should we take to help the community? Thank you.
Right. What steps should we take to help communities, John, and protect their nutrient intake? All right, so thank you, all of you. John, if you would like to address those questions.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for the questions. And of course, the first, I think, objective of what we are doing is to generate knowledge. Knowledge that will help whoever is in a position to decide to make a decision based on evidence. So that's the first. So it really applies to everyone, the government, private sector, development partners, and including researchers as well. So and then in practice, there are a couple of things that first, the reason we are laying out the map, because that's what it is, the map of what the micronutrient deficiency is across the country, what are the expected impact in terms of both income and price changes, is because first, now the World Bank is, they are calling it agriculture smart, nutrition smart agriculture. So when you design your agricultural program, when you select the crops, you select livestock, you select a fishery, it is based on that map, because you have nutrition deficiency to address. And not because just it's the deficiency itself, because behind the deficiency, there are critical health concerns. And health concerns become a development issue because you will need a robust human capital to drive the development. So that's if we can get those in a position to decide, to understand that dynamics with this type of analysis, that will be a win. The second, one mentioned the issue, I think Brian mentioned the Senegalese government driven by export for horticulture and fisheries. We know that fishery and horticultural products are source of protein, for example. So if, as we show in that presentation, the level of deficiency in protein is so high, maybe the government can consider to some of those products, the horticulture and fishery, to be consumed locally. And that might require some incentive to the private to the private sector, or to the in terms of subsidy to local to consumers, to make sure that it's not, you are not exporting all your protein while you yourself need them locally. And that brings the issue of trade policy, trade strategy. So the same way we have the nutrition smart agriculture, we should have some sort of a nutrition smart trade. So when the government is the system is spending a lot of money to import food, let's make sure that that food is coming in to address those nutrient deficiencies. So that's the some of the things that can be. The same thing applies for aid, food aid. As of now, what do we hear? There is a food shock somewhere. We bring in food aid, cereals, bring in maize or rice, but no one really asks what is the deficient, the nutrition issue that we are trying to address beyond just providing the quantities to households. So that is very, very important. So that covers Patrice, Brian, and Muqtar's questions. For my good friend Joseph, yes. So here, the given good, I'm using it just to refer it because it's known in the demand theory. That's for the quantities. Remember, the demand so we moved using the Lancaster model from quantity to nutrient. In a way, there is no own price in that demand because there is no price for nutrients to speak. So the positivity in elasticity, it, as I said, should be more addressed as the substitution effect than the given good. But I refer to given good because that's what is known in the demand theory. But just to be here, we moved from your utility function in the demand to more expenditure function as a function of micronutrient, which micronutrient doesn't have a price, own price. So we need to be a little bit careful on how we interpret the in terms of given good. I should not have, but I thought it was good to mention that maybe it's yeah, it can be there might be some micronutrients for the poor. You mentioned the calories, for example, because you need, so this is something that you need, you cannot live without, basically. So even the price goes up, you are forced to increase, to maintain a certain level of welfare. And of course, now, how do you address those, again, micronutrient deficiency gaps? Yes, fortification is one way, although the issue with fortification is not helping the local economy of the agriculture sector, because you can get it in other ways, and that's why biofortification becomes very, very important, because it's grounded in the local agriculture system. And as I said, so this is now something that the World Bank is being promoted, the so-called agriculture, nutrition smart agriculture. So we develop agriculture sector based on nutrition deficiency in the country in a given area. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Just an added comment on the question by Brian about Senegal's export orientation. Brian, I would like to encourage you to look at our bulletin number 7. If you go to the academia website, academia2063.org, and you click on the portal on COVID, Senegal's top 10 exports now, 3 of them or 4 are mining products. Actually, the largest individual commodity in the export basket of Senegal now is gold, with 20%. Way ahead of all other categories that are in a single digit. If you were to put probably horticulture together, rather than individual commodities, it will probably rank probably very high. But it's just to say that as the country moves towards exporting more mining products, and 20% of exports are gold, and you have the top niobium, tantalum, vanadium, things I've never heard before, then oil is coming up to that. Your question becomes even more pertinent, because that influx of foreign exchange and cash into the economy is going to make everything expensive. So it's not just now an issue of domestic supply of these food, it's also going to be the cost of that food. So if you don't pay attention to the aspect that you're raising, we'll have major issues in terms of the quality of nutrition. However, one case where export orientation has a good impact on nutrition is in the horticultural sector. As you know, Senegal went from about 10,000 tons in the mid to late 90s to more than 100,000 tons of horticultural exports, primarily into the EU. What that did is that the supply of fruits and vegetables fresh in the local market has gone up quite extensively, which adds to quality of nutrition locally. So in that case, we have a win-win for everybody. But my concern, and probably is yours as well, is that as the country moves more and more towards primary products, towards mining, the issue of access to food through a strong agricultural sector and a strong food system is going to be more than important for us to take a look at. All right. So John, also I think that really we need to go and see how we can expand this work to look at non-cereal products as well. Here we're just looking at the impact within the cereals group. I think that non-cereals groups are extremely important. I know you haven't looked at them because of access to prices, but let's reach out to our partners in Dakar, in Senegal, to see if we can have also prices, at least 2019 and 2020, for horticultural products, for dairy products, and livestock products and the like, so we can do the same analysis. Very good. So let me open the floor again for the next round of questions. Please raise your hand if you would like to take the floor. And when you do, please state your name and your affiliation. So where you work, so we know a little bit more of your background. Floor is open. I have Sheryl Hendriks and Julie Collins. So Sheryl first and then Julie.
Hi, Usman and John. Thank you for the very interesting presentation. Some quite worrying results that you present. I note particularly zinc reduction is quite stark, and that's one of the micronutrients that's essential for boosting immune systems in times like the pandemic. But I'm quite curious as well to know, there seems to be quite a flip between the urban and the rural prices. With rural prices, some of those crops coming down, but in urban you see exactly the opposite. Is this due to the limited movement because of lockdowns, or how could you explain it? Thank you, but great work. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Good point. Thank you, Sheryl. Always good having you with us. Thank you very much. Julie?
Hi, thank you, John. Thank you, Usman. Congratulations on the presentation. This is Julie Collins, also from Academia 2063. I just wanted to ask about what the next steps are in terms of incorporating income changes. Is there data that can be collected in any way? Is there any data available, or will it involve simulating different changes in income that we think might be possible? Thanks.
Good question. Any other, before I turn over to John, for questions around the price variation between urban and rural and how you're going to be expanding and bringing income to the work? Any questions around those or whatever else you would like to ask a question about? If not, let me give the floor to John while we wait for the next series of questions. John, please.
Yes, thank you, Sheryl. Thank you, Julie. On the prices, there are two things to consider, I believe. The first, as I mentioned, maybe because we are using an average for the first semester from January to June. Maybe that's why we are missing some of the COVID, so-called COVID impact in rural areas. So we are now revising the data using the period from March to June, and we'll see what the results. However, and I think you point out to one of the explanations is that maybe the lockdowns, the social distancing, the mobility restrictions are more felt or followed in urban areas than in rural areas. That might be one of the explanation. Another one may also be that maybe in rural area it happened, found farmers in maybe in some harvesting period, or there was some stock available that preventing the price to go up, and that's what seems to be happening, I think, in Malawi, when because of the lockdown they could not export. They ended up with a lot of food item in stock, and the price went down. So we need those kind of in the ground explanations to tie to the dynamics that we are observing. So those are the two things that we'll be looking at. First, maybe the COVID impact has started showing up maybe in March or April, or the issue of social distancing measures being more followed in urban areas where, you know, there is the government has the means to reinforce those measures versus rural areas. In terms of next steps, yes, so we need to complete the analysis with income or expenditure data. You know, in Africa in general, the data collecting data on prices is they do it weekly, monthly, but when it comes to income or expenditure, if you are lucky, it's every year. So however, we can see with all the initiatives around COVID-19, maybe there is one collecting expenditure or income, maybe even in a city like Dakar, that would be enough to combine both the income and the price effect as well. But also there is a way of simulating income changes. I think I know my colleague Ismail and his team are doing some of the simulation that will lead to using some of the global simulations from the World Bank, IMF, to generate the impact of COVID-19 on household income. And so we can use that as a proxy to complete the analysis. And of course, going forward, as I said, we need to combine consumers and producers as well, because the one that we did, it's on consumption side. When producers' income goes down, his demand or consumption of those micronutrients also goes down, and we need to make sure we capture the net to advise the government on how to design a policy that fits both the consumer and the producer. And of course, the goal is to expand the analysis to other African countries and to see how different the dynamics is across Africa. Many tend to consider Africa as a monolithical body, and then when they talk about supplying aid to Africa to combat COVID-19, we don't see those heterogeneity, because if a country has an issue with vitamin A, then maybe cereal is not the type of food aid that they need. So we hope to add more countries and to come at the end of the process with an Africa-wide view of where the issues are and how to address them.
Thank you, John. Interesting questions and discussion here. So I think there's quite a lot on the table. While we're waiting for the next round of questions, some are asking for the publication. It will be up tonight or latest tomorrow. If you go to the link that's been provided in the chat box to our COVID-19 portal, should be able to download the paper tomorrow at the latest. All right, so the floor is open for more questions and comments for John.
There is a question from Greenwell.
I saw he wanted to raise his hand. Did he send a text?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Greenwell, you want to ask a question? Go ahead, Green. You're muted, Greenwell.
Am I still muted?
No,
Hello?
you're okay.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. So nice stuff, John. This is great. But I just wanted to find out, would the differentials between what you're finding in the urban centers and versus the rural centers be probably due to knowledge differences between the two places? Yeah, because I was just thinking, so the characteristics model, at least one of the implicit assumptions that the person who's demanding the commodity knows something about the commodity. So if there are differences in terms of education, maybe that can count. So, I mean, what do you think?
All right. What explains the difference between rural and urban? From Gabriel Machaya, thank you very much. Getal?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Getal Tadressa. I'm one of the staff in the Academia 2063, and I'm in Ethiopia. But my question for John, you said is one of the weakness for this one is a partial analysis. Partial in a sense that you're doing analysis for each commodities, from each commodity and each nutrient. Is it not possible to merge the different nutrient from the different groups? For example, calcium from maize, millet, or all this together. Is it because of the price? Is it because of what's the problem? Because to do some sort of, because at a household level, maybe if we assume that they are aware of the nutrients, they want to maximize the consumption from different commodities. So because it would have been very, very good if it was, I mean, sort of combined at household level, at least.
Yes.
In terms of how many calcium from maize and how many from, yeah, that's my question.
Thank you. I can start with Getao question. No, the partiality has nothing to do with the number of commodity. We are using the whole universe of food items consumed in Senegal, and it's a big range. I said it's partial because first, we don't account for income effects, just because we have income elasticities, we have all the price elasticities, but in the simulation of COVID-19 impact, we do not account for income effect. And on the price side, we have only cereal prices. So that's the partiality aspect of the study. But we are estimating the whole food universe of food consumed in Senegal.
John, that means that if you had the prices for the other commodities, you do exactly what Geta was saying. You will aggregate calcium intake across all groups of commodities. It's not going to be just cereals. You're just doing it for cereals, but even there, you're looking at calcium across different cereals, not only one. So it's just the price which is a limitation. That's why you haven't looked at the other commodities as sources of supply for those micronutrients. Is that correct?
No. The demand for micronutrient, it's for all. When we estimate protein.
No, but your simulation that you made.
Yes, the simulation is. Yes, it's only.
Go ahead.
Yes, so the demand itself, when we estimate the protein, is using all goods, all food items, cereals and vegetables and everything. Now, on simulating the impact of price, we have only price on cereals. So we are not capturing the change that would have been from other prices.
That's correct. That means that the contribution of vegetables and fruits to vitamin A and how that changes when the price of cereals changes is not captured.
No.
Right? If you had their prices, then you will have those substitution elasticities and whatever. So you'll have them in the analysis. So that's what again I was saying. So you're not looking at calcium or macronutrients only from one group of products because you chose to do that, but you're doing it only because you cannot simulate the impact on the other demand because you don't have prices during the crisis period.
That's true.
So you can include them.
That's true. Yes.
Yeah.
On the Greenwell's question on does education matters? I would say yes. However, and that's a reason. One of the reasons they call it a hidden hunger, because even for educated people, I mean, how often you go to the supermarket to buy vitamin A or vitamin B12 or certain amount of calories, or even to pay attention to, you know, so that's yes, education will play a certain role, but here I think we need to do more than just your usual education. Has to be communication, has to be training household on, and those are the things that Sheryl and her team works on. How do you educate the household on what is good for the diet, which may not be, you know, I remember in DRC when they tried to introduce yellow sweet potato, which is very rich in iron? Is it iron? It's very rich in iron, but people are used to white sweet potato, and you know, for them, you're moving from white to yellow, unless you educate them, it's a big jump. But still the same sweet potato. So that's the type of education that will matter more than you're just having a degree, so to speak. Yes.
All right, and I also would add here, John, that it's also a matter of available supplies and dietary traditions. For example, I think in your table, there are 1 or 2 macronutrients where the rural areas are doing much better than the urban areas. It is because that kind of food, at least that is rich in those macronutrients, are more consumed in rural areas. Not because the consumer made a conscious choice of choosing that, but it's just because it happens to be what is in the food systems in the rural areas. So the source of supply, the availability of it, and even the cooking traditions all determine at the end of the day also what people eat. So they don't buy and they don't cook micronutrients, they buy food, and that's affected by a lot of other things. So that makes sense also the difference there. Very good. So more questions from around for John and Umengo? Questions and comments for John? All right. So if there are none more, John, are there any other items, issues you would like to raise? I didn't see the chat line, but I don't think there's anything in the chat.
There is an addition to the chat from Untitled Barnard. We are going to grant you access to the mic, sir, so that you can express your question.
Okay. Please, I see here, is it the one referring to South Africans I used to eat white maize?
Hi, good day. My name is Ilonka Barnard. I am a research assistant to Professor Hetty Schoenfeld at the Arua Center of Excellence, and then also a PhD student at the University of Pretoria in South Africa. I just wanted to add to the comment, South Africans are also, we are used to eating or consuming white maize meal, whereas yellow maize meal is actually, it's more nutritious, but it's just the past thinking that we have always consumed white maize meal, and it just, we won't, the consumers won't change.
Yeah, that's right.
Indeed, it's a tough issue to address because dietary habits and preferences are very, very hard to change, actually. But education, market forces, and others will change that. I do remember that the awareness, especially among the urbanites and let's say the middle class, about nutrition, at least in Senegal, has changed dramatically toward the better. There's still overconsumption of sugary drinks among people, older than 50 and 60, which I think is probably, even for younger folks, is not the right thing to do. But I think they're more aware of nutrition now than they used to be. And I probably would think that it applies across the continent. But the gap is just far and wide for people to understand food, first of all, from its functional form before its culinary and taste bad functions. And that's a long way to go and requires a lot of education for people to understand that. All right, but thank you for that contribution. And good luck on your PhD. So are there other comments, questions? If not, John, are there any other final statements that you would like to make?
Yeah, I mean, just to extend the analysis, as we said, to include income and cover more than just a cereal in terms of price simulations, and includes, as we go, more countries to have a more or less Africa-wide view on where the issues are. And because this is one step to produce knowledge, as many pointed out, how do you use the knowledge to address the issues? I think that will be another step. And how do we reach out to the policymakers, to the private sector, to development partners to include in their decision-making process those type of analysis and evidence.
Thank you. I would also suggest, John, that as you expand this work to look at the impact on incomes and what it does beyond the changes in prices in local markets, I would be very curious to see what the story is going to be for Southern African countries. The picture coming from there, from the analysis by Greenway and his team, is that because a country like Mozambique or Malawi tend to be a regional exporter, COVID has basically severed cross-border trades corridors and has led to heavy pressure on local prices that went down. So basically, it's not going to be the negative effect of price spikes or nutrient intake. It's most likely going to be the impact of falling incomes by the poor and the farmers and those who depend on food businesses, the loss of income on their macronutrient intake. So it's a very different dynamics that probably will have to capture through the income stuff. So the more you expand to more countries, I think we'll get more interesting nuances of this analysis. But this is quite interesting to see what's coming out of here. So thank you very much. I think I saw a chat from Brian Sowell. All right, was just thinking. Okay, very good, Brian. We look forward to having you with us again in our next seminars. All right, So then, John, what I would do here, maybe perhaps Nabu also to let folks know that they will not be a webinar on September 17th next week, because we're having a formal launch event. This is a young organization, 10 weeks old. So we're having a launch event next week on Thursday, and therefore won't be able to do the seminar, the webinar. But we'll be back October 1, where we'll look at cross-border trade and its disruption under the crisis, under the pandemic, and what it means for the food systems. So the presentation will be given by Antoine Bouet, former colleague from IFPRI, and it will be moderated by Dr. Sunday Ojo from Academia 2063, Deputy Director of the Knowledge Systems Department. So I say thank you again to all of you for joining us, and I very much look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks from now when we discuss around trade. And please go to the portal, to the Academia website, and look at the resources that are there. Beyond the bulletins, the briefs, you also find a lot of additional resources that are not published, data, maps and charts that are basically produced as we prepare this report, but don't put in the report, but they are very useful for you. And remember to sign up so you can get our newsletters and our bulletins and briefs. Thank you very much to everybody again, and see you in 2 weeks' time from now. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.